Do you find yourself always being the good girl, the achiever, or the caretaker and still struggling with migraines no matter how hard you try? Well, these rules, these rhythms, and these roles that we consider our normal, and that's just who I am, they secretly trigger pain chemistry in your brain that keeps you stuck in survival mode. Watch today because I'm going to show you how this shift takes place to create migraine and then what you can do to shift out of it. Hey, how are you? My name is Kai. I'm an integrative physical therapist, neurosensory expert, and trauma sensitive coach. And here in this community, yes, including you, we are here to break cycles, beat systems, and bust a migraine. So today, these three personas, notice I call them personas and not personality traits. I'm here to awaken you to self-reflect and see, do I have a tendency to fall into these rhythm, rules, and roles and call it my normal? There's nothing wrong with these roles in and of themselves. When we are in survival mode, these roles become a compulsion. And that's when your nervous system gets depleted, especially when it's stuck in this role and has been for a long time. 1958, Elvis Presley came out with a song, and the name of the song was Any Way You Want Me, That's How I'll Be. And it's such a good song and it's such a sad song. A lot of us have grown up having to fit into a role to get what we needed, to get the love that we wanted, the attention, the admiration, the affection, the acceptance. We fell into one of these roles because we weren't getting what we needed. Yeah. So we needed this as a young person to develop our identity. You didn't have that. And so you fell into one of these roles, maybe all of them at different times, to try to get that, right? The validation that you were seeking. And you weren't thinking these thoughts as a young person, you were just surviving because your nervous system and your developmental process was hungry for that. One of these roles helped you falsely feel that. Who do you need me to be so that I can feel like I deserve being loved? So there's some different energies behind each of these roles, okay? So if we look at the good girl has an energy of, I'm going to strive to comply. Very compliant is the good girl because she just wants approval. She just wants to be noticed and be accepted and be loved. Okay? So the next one is the achiever. This is, I'm going to impress to get. And what does she need? Acceptance, affection, approval, attention. Whatever she is lacking, she will impress to get. So maybe that was good grades, sports, or music, or whatever she had. She might be using that to get those things that she is needing, that's lacking. And then we have I give to get. This is the caretaker. I give to get. You're giving of your time, your energy, you're wanting a validation. You can become your purpose. It can become your identity. When you use caretaking to get validation, attention, recognition, especially with this caretaking role, there is, as an adult, I need to feel needed. feeling needed is how a caretaker role becomes part of her identity as an adult. It looks like we're loving the people around us because as women we become the wife, the mother, the friend, the neighbor, the whatever leadership role we are in, but it's fear dressing up as kindness. All of these have an air or a flavor of people pleasing. We're not trying to be nice. We're trying to feed the fear. The fear gets us in trouble with our brain. I'm going to talk to you about the amygdala, who I affectionately term as Amy. Okay? So the amygdala in our brain, and I'm not going to get into the whole neuroscience because that's not what we're here for, but the amygdala, let's call this A, is the fear center of your brain. Okay? So A is the fear center. Amygdala. We're calling her Amy because she needs something, and when she doesn't get it, that's when our neurotransmitter fires and we get a migraine. When she doesn't get what she needs over a period of time, and we have reached our tank of tolerance and the depletion has taken over and we have gotten a migraine. Yes. So here's Amy, okay? So we also have this thing called the hippocampus in our brain. And this is where memories are stored. And we have this area in the bottom back of our brain called the cerebellum. And this is where emotional regulation takes place. We all agree that migraine is a neuroplastic pain. Fear pisses off Amy. Amy then, the amygdala, pulls an alarm on your whole body. Neurotransmitters get fired. It's your body saying, please help me get back into balance, okay? When you are living these roles in survival mode, this becomes a chronic way of living, okay? So it's not like, oh, I slammed on the brake and all these neurotransmitters flooded to help my body protect myself and keep me safe. And then whew, I went back into normal traffic and my body could recover. No, when we live in these states chronically for years, your body is sending a warning with these alarms. And when nobody heeds the warning, when nothing changes to help to balance and recover again, then Amy's last resort has been found for you to use migraine to help balance and recalibrate and recover. Migraine is a desperate survival plea for your body to recover this depletion that it's feeling and it's not getting balanced again. You see, you have to understand your body is amazing at creating and finding balance. But when it doesn't have the opportunity to restore and regain balance, it will use migraine to balance for you. Why do we get pulled into these roles? And what can we do about it? I'm going to give an example of how these ways we've learned to survive can continue and stay on in adulthood. Okay? So for example, you were growing up as a young person. Maybe you had family expectations, right? That threw you into one of these roles, right? You had the mom or dad who was like, you are nothing and nobody unless you have this with your grades or this with your sport or this with perfection or whatever it is they were driving onto you, okay? Maybe you had family expectations as a caretaker. Maybe you had an ill parent who was just sick. You were one of the older siblings and you had to take care of younger siblings. A parent had an alcohol problem or substance abuse problem and you had to become the caretaker. A parent who was going through a divorce or had financial troubles and was always depressed or whatever. You always felt like you had to take care of them emotionally. Good girl. Maybe you grew up in this like crazy religious home and controlled and felt dominated by the guilt trip, not having the right to make mistakes. Or maybe you just had critical parents or critical caregivers that judged you a lot, and so you felt, wow, if I could just be this good girl, then maybe they'd get off my back, or maybe they would finally accept me. And this usually driven by what is known as fear, obligation, and guilt. So family expectations can drive these roles: fear, obligation, and guilt. Or it might be smog. I call shame, manipulation, overthinking because you were groomed that way. Those are the results of why you have a compulsion to be driven into one of those. Maybe had this, you were a career climber. And so in your line of work, with your boss, with coworkers, you just took on so much because you were driven by this and you were trying to please everybody so that you could achieve and be noticed and be validated, somebody who's worthy of attention, acceptance, affection, whatever it is. Maybe you were in a relationship and you felt like the unloved wife or the unloved child, and you just wanted to have a way to try to receive that love. You felt like you weren't deserving of love, and so you felt like love had to be earned. And so if I could really master one or all of these roles, I might feel finally loved the way in which I've always desired to be. The root of migraine can often be found in the way that we turn against our own selves, especially with the harsh inner critic voice that goes on in the head. And another way is with codependent behaviors. And these people pleasing ways are an example. It's a compensatory behavior. That's why it's a persona. It's not your actual personality, who you came into this world to be. Whether it's the harsh inner critic voice or these codependent behaviors that you're compensating with, what's going through your mind body is that I'm not good enough, I'm not doing enough, and I must earn love. These processes in our body, including pain, are driven by our subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind will always take the route of least resistance. So if it's known this, to try to create safety, to try to create protection, to try to feel okay and good enough, I'm here to tell you today that there's another way to treat yourself and handle yourself and relate to yourself and relate to the world around you. What does it feel like when Amy is fired? Okay, I'm going to give you 8 examples. You ever had that parent that was always like, why can't you be like Susie Q in church, who's the perfect daughter, sister, child, friend? Why can't you just be like her? Because she does everything right and you don't. Or why can't you be like your big brother who is always doing this better than you are? Criticizing, contrasting, efforts that you make, things that you do well that are just criticized. You see, this is how this energy gets created within our nervous system. Your amygdala created and your hippocampus created a memory, and this feeling is stored in your brain. When you find in everyday life somebody's tone of voice, somebody's body language, or somebody's facial expression, this is what your nervous system reads and picks up as danger and a threat. Whoa, that's an alarm. From a long time ago, this meant really, this was stressful. This was danger, and I really felt threatened. And I knew that if I didn't do one of those roles, achiever, good girl, or caretaker, I felt excluded and didn't feel loved and part of this family dynamic. Okay, so next we have condemning, complaining, callous, or cynical. How many of you have the harsh inner critic voice that's cynical? The way we speak to ourselves in our own head. Ugh. Wow. The way that we talk to ourselves, we wouldn't dare speak to our worst enemy. But this is how we speak to ourselves. Condescending, condemning, I look at those as two of the same. Complaining, callous, the way we can be so callous, and cynical. These feelings that we felt when we weren't good enough and had to fall into one of those roles, these are feelings that get put on to us, either by ourselves, because that's the way we're handling and relating to ourselves, or the way that we are perceiving. It doesn't even have to be what's really happening. Your nervous system is perceiving. Remember, migraineurs have sensitive sensory systems. Our senses are very sensitive. So you might be perceiving something that's not even truly in reality, but it doesn't matter. Your brain, all it has to do is perceive danger by one of these very negative driving feelings, and it can drive the fear center in your brain. So these I call the 8 C's that fire Amy. All of these fire Amy, and I'm sure there's many more, but these negative emotions, they're really driven by shame and guilt. The shame and guilt are one of the lowest frequencies that keep your body from being able to balance itself the way that God created it to. When you're stuck in shame and guilt, driven by these 8 C's, that you will feel, it doesn't even have to be by the same people that created this wiring to begin with. It's somebody's tone of voice, your boss, who looks at you sideways and makes you feel that fear, obligation, guilt. Why can't you stay an hour after you're supposed to go home today? Tone of voice, making you feel guilty and shameful and fear. Or facial expression. You were at home and you had to work that really late shift. You came home and you were exhausted. Gosh, you just needed to lie on the couch for a little bit and just rest, right? And try to recover from the day you had before you tried to tackle the evening responsibilities at home, right? Then you have your spouse roll your eyes and be like, ugh, do you have to be so lazy? This is an example of how you can get triggered with the fear center in your brain. Oh my gosh, I'm not doing enough. I'm not good enough. And then this feeling within you drives neurotransmitters like cortisol, like norepinephrine, like adrenaline, that fires and triggers the alarm center, Amy. So you just get up off the couch and you're like, oh, and you're trying to do everything to be this perfect mother, this perfect wife, this perfect caregiver, perfect caretaker. You never got the rest and recover that you needed from that crazy day you had. So you just keep going, and it's driven by fear, because you were driven by fear to work late extra that you knew you were already tired and you had all these things to do at home. Then you come home and you get it again. The fear, shame and guilt, And so then you end up being cynical and talking callous to yourself. And you're like, why can't I be like sister so-and-so at church because she always has all 12 of her kids in a row and they're always quiet and everybody looks perfectly put together. And I just can't be that way. And why can't I be that way? Do you see how this can become somebody's way of life every day, all day long for years? So a lot of people think the opposite of shame and guilt is love. But actually, that's not true. Guess what the highest frequency is energetically that will shift you into balance and keep you balanced neurologically with your neurotransmitters? The best. Authenticity. And when you are striving and driving and complying at work, when you're trying to give to get, when you're trying to, all of these different energetic things, okay? All of these are keeping you at this low frequency and your body's not regenerating and recovering. There's whispers that the body will give before a migraine to try to get you to recover and recalibrate and rebalance. But when those get ignored, she has no choice but to go to her last resort. Because of your genetic makeup, it will resort to migraine to try to rebalance you. That's why you want to go into a fetal position and not move. That's why you want the dark lights and no sound and to be by yourself, isolated. It's so that you can recover and replenish and recalibrate. There are 8 C's that we can choose from in any given time to counter those negative 8 C's I had up on the board, okay? And I'm attributing these to IFC from Richard Schwartz, who created these 8 C's. So I want to give him credit. These are 8 C's, but the good C's. Curiosity, clarity, compassion, confidence, courage, creativity, connectedness, or calmness. Depending on what negative C that you're feeling in that moment, you can tell Amy. So this is a way that you can talk to your brain. Yes, out loud you can talk to your brain. Because when you have repeated that enough, you then can rewire. Because your subconscious responds to emotions and repetition of that emotion. Yeah. Just like it wired it by that emotion and the repetitiveness of that emotion in your developmental years is the same way that we rewire it now in adulthood. The good girl, the achiever, or the caregiver, you can shift those by speaking to your brain when it gets into those like comparing, competing, contrasting, condemning ways. You can speak to your brain. Now, the first thing that I will say, this is a given in a compassionate tone. This can do an immediate shift. Compassion to yourself. This is inner child work. So you get to refer to that little girl inside that needed attention, needed affection, needed acceptance, needed approval, and she didn't get those things. So you have compassion for that part of you, that wounded younger self in here that's still looking for safety and protection. You, as your loving adult self, you can meet her right where she's at in that moment. And you can speak to Amy, the amygdala, with compassion. Okay, that's one. And then another one is curiosity. A plus B equals C, and it always has in your life. But what if you said, I'm going to be curious and say, what if I was able to use confidence and courage and say to my boss, you know, you wanted me to stay an extra hour today. I am not able to do that today, but I will take the extra time that I need to finish that. Tomorrow, I will make the extra time tomorrow in my regular work, like whatever it is. You being able to open your mouth and be able to speak your truth, your authentic self, where you're able to stand up for yourself and your needs and your feelings, achiever, caregiver roles that you fell into. You didn't feel like your needs matter. You didn't feel like your feelings mattered. Integrity interrupt that you're feeling in that moment. You can instead say with curiosity, what if I had the courage and the confidence to use my tone of voice, to speak with my body language and have my facial expression? Well, I have a boundary now, and this is how I'm going to work through that. And not fear rejection. If you're stuck in the fear of the amygdala, that often puts us into free state and fawn state, where we really comply, and we turn into a free state. We feel like there's nothing we can do. Remember, you have fight, flight, freeze, and fawn as the way that Amy can be triggered. Creativity, thinking outside the box, connectedness. We feel like we are that same little girl who did not have the authority, the autonomy, or the position to stand up for herself. But connecting to who you are right now as an adult who has the right to speak up, who has the authority and the autonomy to speak her needs and her wants and to get what she wants, because we're dealing with adults here. You are not this little girl anymore, but your brain perceives you as that way because of the memory, right? The hippocampus, it remembers when that tone of voice was used. You're that powerless little girl who can't do a thing because all these people are bigger and powerful than you. And that's not the case now. So you connect to who you really are now. Calmness, clarity. Oh, confusion is the opposite of clarity. And so many times we were spun with manipulation to keep us confused, to keep us small, and to keep us quiet. So clarity is a huge one. We can say, what if I had any one of these C's? What then would I say? What then would I do with my behavior? How would my tone of voice, how would my posture, how would my body language, and how would my facial expression then change? And these are ways that you can shift those low frequency emotions. This learned process that we fear rejection, we fear abandonment, we fear failure, we fear shame. When we can recognize that old family systems expectations, this way that we have felt unloved as a child, as a daughter, now maybe as a wife or as a friend, or unappreciated as an employee, whatever it is, when you can recognize when these patterns are taking place and then shift into, you have the power within you to speak your needs and communicate, not be aggressive, but you can be assertive. These are things that empower you as an individual with agency and autonomy and authenticity. These are the ways in which you can rewire your brain. In my Lady Liberty program, Beyond Migraine Neuro Emancipated, in 7 phases, I take you on a journey on how to achieve what I'm talking about. We can stop saying yes out of fear. Your body doesn't have to fall into this a migration to migraine. We can stop it and we can shift it so that it doesn't happen anymore. And when you repeat these emotions, when you repeat this is neuroplasticity. This is how you rewire your brain to not create migraine. So book a call with me. I'd love to see if this would be a good fit for you and your specific situation. I will be honest with you and let you know. At the end of the call, I go over an assessment during the call. So yes, I can't wait to meet all of you. Get the link in the description, and I will talk to you soon and see you in the next video.